Hello, my name is Felicity, and I'm 35 years old. Recently, I went through a divorce that caught me completely off guard. I had always believed my marriage was the happiest chapter of my life, but as I reflected on everything, I realized it was far from perfect. Numerous issues contributed to its downfall. Let me take you back to how it all began. I first met Axel through a mutual friend, and we immediately hit it off. He was charming, good-looking, and had a magnetic personality. We dated for 3 years before deciding to get married. During that time, our relationship was mostly smooth sailing. We shared similar values and made compromises for each other. However, one major challenge came from Axel's parents, Millie and Iago, who were difficult from the start. Our first meeting was uncomfortable. When I arrived at their house for dinner, I noticed only 3 plates on the table, for them and Axel. I felt confused and embarrassed but tried to brush it off. Throughout the evening, they made little effort to be welcoming, and Axel remained silent. In hindsight, this should have been a warning sign. Despite their ongoing rude behavior, Axel never defended me. After that uncomfortable dinner, I waited for him to acknowledge what had happened, but he never did. Eventually, I confronted him. "I need to talk about last night," I said. Axel sighed. "I'm going to sleep," he muttered, acting as if I was overreacting. Frustrated, I pushed back. "You let them treat me that way without saying a word. You expect me to disrespect my parents in their own home?" He shot back. "I'm not asking for that," I replied, "but a heads up about how they act would have helped." "They have their ways," he said defensively. "Speaking up would have been disrespectful." "Are you really justifying this?" I asked, hurt. "Don't you care how they made me feel? Can we not do this right now?" He said, "Good night." And with that, he walked away, leaving me stunned. I hoped he was just embarrassed, but deep down, I felt empty. The next morning, he acted as if nothing had happened. I was still upset, so I gave him the silent treatment for a week, waiting for an apology that never came. Eventually, I let it go, not wanting to jeopardize our relationship. After that, we avoided his parents completely, only seeing them again at our wedding. I made a point to steer clear of them, interacting only when necessary. At the reception, they asked about our honeymoon plans. When we mentioned Hawaii, they suggested an overseas trip instead, one they would fund under the condition that they came with us. Though Paris sounded exciting, it wasn't what I had envisioned. Wanting some space, I excused myself, feeling uneasy. Wasn't a honeymoon supposed to be just for the couple? Hawaii may not have been as extravagant as Paris, but it was a dream destination for me. What hurt the most was that Axel had already accepted their offer without even discussing it with me. I tried to shake it off and enjoy the evening, but the mood was ruined. The next morning, I brought it up. "I want to talk about the honeymoon," I said. "It's not about where we go, but the fact that you didn't involve me in the decision." Axel shrugged. "My parents made a great offer. Paris is amazing." "I'm not saying no," I said, "but shouldn't we have chosen together? Stop overthinking it." He dismissed me. "You're ruining a good opportunity." Feeling defeated, I went along with it despite my reservations. A month later, we met Millie and Iago at the airport, where they greeted me unusually warmly. At first, I thought they had changed, but it didn't last. During the first week in Italy, they gradually returned to their old ways. They criticized my clothes, making snide comments about my fashion choices. Some days, they deliberately excluded me from outings, claiming my outfits were embarrassing. The more this happened, the more isolated I felt. By the second week, they started making remarks about my weight and diet. If I ordered anything beyond a salad, Millie would make passive-aggressive comments despite eating rich meals herself. Axel, instead of supporting me, either ignored them or chuckled along. I counted down the days until I could go home. The vacation became miserable, and Axel's indifference made it worse. I wanted to talk to him about it, but every attempt was met with avoidance or dismissal. On our final day, I took charge of gathering our travel documents. When I asked Axel for my plane ticket, he claimed he didn't have it. It struck me as odd, but after everything I had endured, I was too drained to react. I went to Millie and Iago's room to ask about it. "Axel, Iago, and I leave in 3 hours," Millie said casually. Panic set in. "What about my ticket?" I asked. "Oh, we forgot to buy it," she responded nonchalantly. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "How do you forget something so important?" She waved me off. "You can buy one separately." I was livid. This was just another way to push me aside. Desperate, I turned to Axel. "You need to step up. You can't keep letting them treat me like this." Millie interjected. Figure it out yourself. I looked at Axel, hoping he'd finally stand by me. Instead, he hesitated before mumbling, "They paid for the trip out of their retirement savings. I can't just abandon them." I felt my heart sink. As we walked away, I pleaded one last time. "Please, Axel, don't leave me alone." He refused to meet my eyes, and at that moment, I realized I was completely on my own. I couldn't ignore the way Axel's parents had treated me, and what hurt even more was that he did nothing to stop it. Tears welled in my eyes as I watched him pack his bags, barely acknowledging my presence. He didn't apologize, didn't offer to cover my return ticket, he didn't even seem to care. I wanted to lash out, to make a scene, but I was already humiliated enough. When it was time for them to leave, Axel kept his head down, while Millie and Tiago waved goodbye, their smiles smug and insincere. Rage simmered inside me. I was stranded alone in a foreign country while my so-called husband walked away without a second thought. After enduring their cruelty and Axel's indifference for an entire month, I had reached my breaking point. That's when I knew I needed payback, and I knew exactly how to get it. I had always known Axel's financial stability stemmed from his parents, who had an outstanding mortgage when they retired. When Axel became financially secure, they transferred it to him, but once the debt became overwhelming, he conveniently passed it on to me. With my higher income and excellent credit, I was the one keeping the house afloat. I reached out to my best friend, Abby. Her husband, Max, was a property lawyer, and I needed his expertise. "Abby, I need your help," I admitted. "I've been making the mortgage payments ever since Axel handed it over to me. It's time I take control." Max joined our call, his tone sharp and professional. "Since the payments have been solely in your name, we can legally transfer the house to you." The realization hit me hard. 4 months, I had let Axel off the hook. Initially, I accepted that he needed a financial break, but after 7 months of zero contributions, I confronted him. "Axel, you haven't paid a single cent. What's your excuse?" I demanded. He scoffed. "Are you jealous of my lifestyle? You knew I needed time to relax." That was the moment I saw Axel for who he truly was. Looking back, I should have questioned why I had taken on his financial burden so easily. Max was blunt. "I can't believe you didn't see through him sooner." "I was in love," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I thought he could do no wrong." "Well, now you know," Max said firmly, "and you need to act fast. He's been using you to pay off his family home. It's time to take back what's yours." "How do I do that?" I asked. "It's simple," Max assured me. "Since you've been solely responsible for the payments, we can remove his name from the house. I'll handle the legal side, including an eviction notice." With their support, I felt empowered. I refused to be taken advantage of any longer. Knowing Axel and his parents had a 35-hour layover in Turkey, I timed my plan perfectly. They were staying in an airport hotel in Istanbul, where I had once been excited to join them. Now, it was just another reminder of how insignificant I was to them. I would make sure they returned to a reality they never saw coming. I quickly booked a flight home, managing to get a seat within hours. During the journey, I couldn't stop crying. Even after everything, the pain of Axel's betrayal cut deep, but what hurt the most was that he never once called to check on me. The thought of evicting them gave me a brief sense of satisfaction. They'd be forced to squeeze into our shared apartment, which coincidentally had its lease expiring in a month. Any lingering sympathy I might have felt vanished when I remembered how easily they had abandoned me. If they had no problem leaving me behind, I had no problem making sure they had nowhere to return to. As soon as I landed, I checked Axel's flight status. They still had 3 hours before departure. Running purely on adrenaline, I drove straight to Millie and Tiago's house. Using the spare key hidden under the doormat, I stepped inside. A surge of determination washed over me. This place was mine now, and I was going to make sure they knew it. Next, I contacted a top divorce attorney and scheduled an urgent appointment. Abby and Max arrived soon after, supporting me as I finalized the paperwork. With every document I signed, removing Axel from the property, filing the eviction notice, and initiating the divorce, I felt myself reclaiming control. "You're doing the right thing," Abby reassured me. "We've got your back," Max added. Their support brought the emotions I had been suppressing to the surface. Being back in this house, filled with memories of Axel, was overwhelming, but this time, I wasn't alone. After they left, I checked Axel's flight again. They had 4 more hours until landing. I needed to be ready. I took a short nap, then freshened up before heading to the lawyer's office to collect the divorce papers. An hour before their arrival, I returned home. my heart pounding with anticipation. When they finally walked through the door, Axel's face twisted in confusion. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice weary. I stood firm. "This is my house now. I've been paying the mortgage for the past year. You all need to leave." Millie gasped. "What?" Axel stammered. "That's not possible. I was handling everything." I cut him off. "No, Axel, you weren't. You put my name on it, stopped contributing, and expected me to keep paying while you lived comfortably. Well, that ends now." His parents looked to him for an explanation, but he was speechless. "You can't do this," Tiago snapped. "Oh, but I can," I replied coolly, "and if you don't leave, I'll call the police." Just before Axel could plead, I handed him the divorce papers. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," I stated firmly. "You don't have to do this," Axel muttered. "I made mistakes, but we can fix this." I shook my head. "No, Axel, it's too late." Watching them leave, defeated and in shock, was the closure I needed. Healing from this betrayal wouldn't be easy, but I had reclaimed my life on my terms, and that, to me, was the sweetest revenge. Over the next few months, Axel tried to fight the divorce, but he quickly backed down when he realized the legal fees would drain his dwindling funds. Last I heard, they were staying with relatives, struggling to get back on their feet. Millie and Tiago were forced out of retirement to afford a place of their own. Did I feel bad? Maybe for a second, but then I remembered, if they had no remorse for what they did to me, why should I? And with that, I moved on, happier and freer than I had ever been.